The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers hissed shut with a finality that seemed to echo the growing dread in every delegate's heart. 3 months had passed since the last human transmission cut to static, and the silence was deafening. Admiral Yulkim's final words still haunted the hall's quantum memory banks. "We're going in. If we don't make it back, remember us." The holographic recording flickered to life once more, showing Kim's weathered face on the bridge of the UES Determination. Behind him, 46 other human vessels stretched into the void like silver, arrows aimed at the heart of the unknown. The Etherian delegate, Zalmoth, couldn't control the agitated writhing of its bioluminescent tentacles. Each pulse of distressed light painted eerie shadows across the chamber's curved walls. 47 human colonies, it spoke through its translator, the mechanical voice failing to hide its anguish. 200 million souls, their entire exploration fleet just gone. The silence that followed was broken by the grinding of metal as the Nexari representative shifted its crystalline form. Each facet of its body caught the chamber's ambient light, creating rainbow patterns that danced across the obsidian floor. "Our quantum processors have run the calculations 14,000 times, it announced, its voice a harmonic resonance that made the air itself vibrate. Zero probability of survival in that region. The void sector consumes everything. Energy, matter, even light itself disappears beyond its borders. Then why? The Guardian representative's voice boomed like distant thunder. The ancient being's form was barely visible within its environmental suit, but its presence filled the room. Why did they venture into certain death? Commander Sol Chang, one of the few humans still present in the galaxy, stood from her observer's seat. Her dark eyes blazed with a mixture of grief and pride that only humans seemed capable of feeling simultaneously. "Because that's what we do," she said quietly, but her words carried to every corner of the vast chamber. "Because when the Zephyrian plague was turning entire star systems into graveyards, Dr. Haypark didn't calculate the odds. She locked herself in a lab for 6 straight days until she found the cure." The holographic displays around the chamber flickered to life, showing archived footage of humanity's greatest moments. Dr. Park, exhausted and hollow-eyed, emerging from her laboratory with the formula that would save billions. Commander Jin, Lee's battered flagship, ramming through Vorthan battle lines, turning the enemy's own quantum weapons against their impenetrable shields. When the Kalurian hive mind consumed the Andromeda relay, Sol continued, her voice growing stronger, Captain Bomin flew his ship straight into their collective consciousness and somehow convinced 1 billion insect warriors to choose individual, thought-over unity. We still don't understand how he did it. The Vorthak ambassador, a serpentine creature whose scales rippled with nervous energy, raised its massive head. "Your species has always been unpredictable. When our war machines conquered system after system, we calculated total galactic domination within 50 cycles. Then humans arrived. They didn't fight us with superior technology," the Vorthak continued, its forked tongue tasting the recycled air. "They fought us with ideas we couldn't compute, sacrifice without logical benefit, cooperation between species that should have been enemies. They turned our own creations against us by showing our AI systems concepts of hope and friendship that broke their programming." A low rumble echoed through the chamber as the massive Goliath delegate stirred. These rock-like beings rarely spoke, but when they did, galaxies listened. Humans came to our dying world when our sun began to collapse. Every other species had written us off as extinct, too heavy to evacuate, too primitive to save ourselves. But humans, the creature's voice, was like grinding stone. They moved our entire moon, turned it into a generation ship. 8 billion of us now travel the stars because humans refuse to accept that some problems have no solutions. The chamber's central display showed the current galactic situation map, red zones spread like infection across previously stable regions. Without human mediators, ancient conflicts were reigniting. Trade routes established through human diplomacy were collapsing as species reverted to old suspicions and prejudices. "The Spiral Consortium's mining operations have ceased," reported the economic AI that managed galactic commerce. Trust between member species has degraded beyond operational parameters. Human negotiators were the only entities capable of bridging cultural and biological differences. Zalmoth's tentacles pulsed with a particularly intense blue light. Our psychic networks are fragmenting. For the first time in our species' history, we cannot find harmony through pure logic. The chaos introduced by human unpredictability somehow stabilized our thoughts. Without them, we're falling apart. Commander Sol Chang looked out through the chamber's massive viewport at the star field beyond. Somewhere out there, beyond, the edge of known space, her people were either dead or facing something worse than death. The void sector had consumed exploration probes from every major civilization for millennia. It was a wound in reality itself, a place where physics broke down and possibility died. But humans had gone anyway, not because they thought they could survive, but because they couldn't bear to leave a mystery unsolved when it might threaten others. "They went," Sul said finally, "because that's what humans do. We go where others can't, we try what others won't, and sometimes, just sometimes, we come back with miracles." The question hanging in the silent chamber was whether this time they would come back at all. 2 years. 730 days since the last human voice had spoken across the galactic communication networks. The silence wasn't just an absence of sound, it was the death of hope itself, spreading like poison through every star system. Commander Sol Chang pressed her palm against the cold metal wall of Research Station Omega, watching the latest casualty. Reports scroll across her screen. The Etherian Collective, once the galaxy's most stable psychic network, was tearing itself apart. Their bioluminescent cities on Vel Prime flickered like dying stars as their mental connections fractured under stress they couldn't logically resolve. Another 3 nodes went dark today, her assistant, an Etherian named Kelvash, reported through the translation unit strapped to its writhing tentacles. The elders are screaming. In their minds. We've never experienced chaos like this before. Sol knew why. For generations, humans had served as the unpredictable element that somehow balanced the Etherians' rigid logic. When their calculations reached impossible dead ends, human creativity had always provided the spark needed to break through. Now, faced with problems that pure reason couldn't solve, their minds were fracturing. Across the galaxy, the Nexaris, crystal cities were going dark too. Their perfect quantum algorithms, capable of predicting stellar weather patterns millions of years in advance, were failing against simple variables that human intuition had always navigated effortlessly. The great manufacturing world of Nexus 7 had shut down completely when their AI systems couldn't adapt to a minor asteroid impact that knocked their production schedules off by 3 hours. "They're like children," Sul muttered, watching another trade convoy get destroyed in what should have been neutral space. The Goliath Federation and the Spiral Consortium were at each other's throats again, their century-old peace treaty crumbling without human diplomats to remind them why they'd stopped fighting in the first place. But it was the new threat that truly terrified everyone. The crystalline entities had emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies, like hungry ghosts made of living diamond. Each one was the size of a cruiser, but they moved through space like jellyfish through water, pulsing with an inner light that seemed to devour the very stars around them. They didn't use weapons in any conventional sense. They simply touched other ships and drained them of all energy, leaving behind empty husks drifting in the void. The first encounter had been at the mining platform, Kepler Station. Patrol Captain Li Dongsu's squadron of 12 fighters had been on routine patrol when sensors detected 15 unknown contacts approaching from the outer system. The crystalline entities moved in perfect formation, their faceted surfaces reflecting starlight in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Unknown vessels, identify yourselves," Dongsu had transmitted. The response came not through their communication systems, but through the hull itself, a vibration that spelled out hunger in a language older than words. The battle that followed lasted exactly 4 minutes and 17 seconds. The entities flowed around the fighters' energy weapons like water around stones. Every shot that struck them seemed to make them brighter, stronger. When they reached the station, they simply pressed against its hull and began to feed. 3,000 workers and their families, gone. Their life signs didn't just disappear, they were consumed, converted into some form of energy that the entities absorbed through their crystalline bodies. The station's fusion reactors, built to power a small city, were drained dry in minutes. Similar attacks had followed across 17 systems. The combined galactic fleet, stripped of human tactical innovation, suffered crushing defeat after crushing defeat. Their admirals, trained to fight conventional wars with predictable enemies, had no answer for foes that treated energy weapons as food and seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. "We've become dependent on them," Councillor Velthan admitted during the latest emergency session, his forearms gesturing helplessly at the tactical displays showing another probe disappearing into the void sector. "We forgot how to fight without humans showing us the way. We forgot how to think without them challenging our assumptions." In her laboratory aboard Research Station Omega, Sol Chang worked with desperate intensity. Around her, banks of quantum computers processed endless streams of data from the void sector, searching for any trace of human technology, any hint that her people were still alive. Her dark hair had grown long and unkempt, her eyes red from staring at screens for days at a time. "The energy signatures are wrong," she announced to her skeptical colleagues during the daily briefing. "The void isn't just consuming matter and energy, it's transforming them. Whatever's happening in there, it's operating on principles we don't understand." Dr. Yoon Hai-rin, the station's Nexari physicist, adjusted her crystalline form to project doubt through harmonic resonance. "Commander Chang, we've detected no signs of human technology for 24 months. Even their most advanced chips would have been consumed by now." "No," Saul insisted, her voice carrying the stubborn determination that had once made humanity the galaxy's problem solvers. "They're not dead. I can feel it in the quantum foam patterns at the void's edge. There's something there, something organized. They're not just surviving, they're working on something." The other scientists exchanged glances filled with pity. Sol had become obsessed, they whispered, the last human in their sector, clinging to impossible hope while the galaxy burned around them. But Sol didn't care what they thought. She'd learned something from analyzing the crystalline entity's energy signatures that she hadn't shared with anyone yet. The creatures weren't random predators from dark space. They were following patterns, operating according to some larger design. And those patterns were leading them inexorably toward the galactic core, where billions of inhabited worlds waited defenseless. Without humanity to show them the impossible, the galaxy was about to learn that some hungers could never be satisfied. The B. Answer came at 3:47 a.m., Galactic Standard Time, when Sol Chang's bloodshot eyes caught something that had been hiding in plain sight for 2 years. She'd been running the same quantum foam analysis for the 1,000th time, her fingers dancing across holographic displays that showed the chaotic energy patterns at the void sector's edge. Most scientists had given up on finding meaning in that swirling mess of broken physics, but Sewell wasn't most scientists. "Computer, isolate frequency band 7.2 through 8.9 and run it through the human linguistic database," she commanded, her voice hoarse from weeks of barely sleeping. The AI hesitated, a sure sign that her request seemed pointless. "Commander Chang, that frequency band contains only background radiation and quantum noise," the computer replied in its annoyingly patient tone. "Just do it," Sewell snapped, leaning forward as streams of data cascaded across her screens. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the computer's voice changed, taking on a tone she'd never heard before. "Commander, there's a pattern. It's incredibly faint, buried under 17 layers of dimensional interference, but it's definitely artificial." Sewell's heart stopped. The pattern wasn't random. It was structured, repeating, encoded. Someone was transmitting across dimensional barriers that shouldn't exist, using technology that shouldn't be possible. And the signature was unmistakably human. She worked for 6 straight hours, her fingers flying over the controls as she peeled back layer after layer of interference. The pattern became clearer with each pass, revealing itself to be far more complex than simple communication. This was a message, but it was also something else, a beacon, a lifeline thrown across impossible distances. When she finally cracked the base encryption, Sewell's legs gave out. She collapsed into her chair, staring at the translation scrolling across her screen, coordinates, star charts, and a single word repeated in Korean, English, Mandarin, and 17 other human languages. Waiting. The emergency council session that followed was unlike any in galactic history. Representatives from every major species crowded into the chamber, their various forms of excitement and agitation creating a cacophony of sounds, lights, and pheromones that nearly overloaded the environmental systems. "It's repeating every 72 hours, Sewell announced, her voice carrying across the vast chamber with newfound strength. "Same pattern, same message. They're not just alive, they're actively transmitting." The Etherian delegate Zal Veth, whose grandmother had once worked alongside human researchers, extended his bioluminescent tentacles toward the data streams. His species' natural ability to perceive quantum fluctuations made them ideal for analyzing the subtle patterns hidden in the transmission. "This is unprecedented," Zalveth's mechanical translator struggled to convey his amazement. "The energy signature suggests they're not just surviving in the void, they're manipulating it, bending dimensional space to their will. My grandmother used to tell stories about human engineering projects, but this is beyond anything they've ever attempted." The chamber erupted in chatter. The massive Goliath representative's rocky form shifted with seismic groans of disbelief. "Impossible. The void consumes everything. No technology can survive in that chaos." "Human technology can," Sewell said quietly, but her words carried clearly. "Because it's not just technology anymore. Look at the quantum resonance patterns in the transmission. They're not using conventional power sources. They're drawing energy from the void itself." On the main display, a three-dimensional map of the void sector materialized, showing the transmission's point of origin deep within the anomaly. The coordinates placed the humans far beyond the region where conventional physics broke down, in a space that existed partially outside normal reality. Councillor Velthan, his forearms gesturing frantically, spoke for everyone in the chamber. "What are they building? The energy readings suggest construction on a massive scale. The power requirements alone are off the charts," finished Dr. Yoon Hae-rin, the Nexari physicist whose crystalline form pulsed with rapid calculations. "They're channeling more energy than our largest star bases. But the frequency modulations suggest precision work, not brute force construction." The Vorthak ambassador raised his serpentine head, scales rippling with nervous energy. "Our war. Machines once conquered half the galaxy. Even we never attempted to harness the void's power. The humans are either brilliant beyond measure or completely insane." "Why not both?" Sewell asked, a tired smile crossing her face for the first time in months. "That's what makes us human." But it was the younger Etherian scientist, Zal Veth, who voiced the question that was making everyone nervous. His tentacles writhed with patterns that his translator couldn't quite process, creating stutters in his mechanical voice. "Commander Chang, there's something else in the transmission, something that disturbs me greatly." The chamber fell silent. Sewell gestured for him to continue. "The energy patterns. They're not just building something mechanical. The quantum signatures suggest they're creating something that operates on principles we don't understand, something that exists partially in our dimension and partially in elsewhere." Sol studied the data streams with new eyes, seeing patterns within patterns. The humans weren't just surviving in the void, they were learning from it, adapting to it, becoming something new. The transmission coordinates weren't just a location, they were an invitation. "They're waiting for us," she whispered, understanding flooding through her. "Whatever they're building, they need help from this side of reality to complete it." The question that hung in the chamber air like a toxic cloud was simple and terrifying. What had humanity become in the void? And were they still human enough to trust? The crystalline entities were still out there, consuming worlds and growing stronger. The galaxy was still dying without human innovation to guide it. But now, for the first time in 2 years, there was hope. The humans had found a way to fight back from beyond the edge of existence itself. The construction of the relay station took 8 months and represented the greatest collaboration in galactic history. Every species contributed their most advanced technology: Etherian bio-neural networks, Nexari quantum processors, Goliath gravitational manipulators, and Vorthak dimensional resonance chambers. The massive structure, spanning nearly 50 kilometers, hung at the edge of the void sector like a metallic flower reaching toward the abyss. Sol Chang stood in the central command chamber, her hands trembling as the final connections came online. Around her, representatives from dozens of species watched their instruments with barely contained anticipation. The air hummed with exotic energies as the station's arrays began piercing the dimensional barriers that had kept them silent for so long. "Power at maximum," announced Dr. Yoon Hai-rin, her crystalline form glowing brighter than anyone had ever seen. "All frequency bands are clear. If they're out there, we'll hear them." For 3 agonizing minutes, nothing came through but the cosmic background radiation that filled empty space. Then, cutting through the static like a knife through silk, came a voice that made Saul's heart nearly stop. "This is Commander Ho-min of the UES Determination. Can anyone hear me? Please respond. We've been trying to reach you for months." The chamber erupted in chaos. Etherian tentacles flashed with brilliant colors. Nexari forms chimed like crystal bells, and the massive Goliath delegate's rocky surface cracked with what could only be joy. Saul grabbed the communicator with shaking hands, her voice breaking. As she spoke, Ho, it's Saul, we're here, we've been searching for you." The pause that followed seemed to last forever. When Ho's voice came back, Saul could hear the exhaustion and relief bleeding through the dimensional static. "Saul, thank God you're alive. I was afraid the entities had reached the core systems. We're holding them back, barely. Ho, what happened? To you, where are you?" "That's complicated." Ho's transmission wavered as something massive moved in the background of his signal. "We didn't just find the void, Saul. We fell through it. There was an accident during our approach, some kind of dimensional cascade that pulled our entire fleet into a parallel space." Saul's blood ran cold. Parallel space? The physics here are twisted, wrong in ways that hurt to think about. Gravity flows upward sometimes. Energy moves backward through time. Our ships shouldn't be able to function, but somehow they're adapting. The hulls are changing, becoming something between metal and living tissue. The transmission strengthened as Ho's voice grew more urgent. "But Sul, we found something. Something that explains everything. There's an ancient machine here, a construct so old it predates our galaxy. It's massive, the size of a small moon, but alive in ways that defy description, and it's been feeding." "Feeding on what?" Sul asked, though she dreaded the answer. "On us, on every inhabited universe it can reach. The crystalline entities aren't invaders, Sul, they're harvesters, biological probes sent out to locate populated systems and drain them of energy. Every time a civilization reaches a certain level of development, they come. They've been doing this for millions of years." The chamber fell deadly silent. Every representative understood the implication immediately. Their entire galactic civilization was nothing more than cattle being fattened for slaughter. Commander Park Jin-woo's voice joined the transmission, crackling with interference. "Saul, you should see this thing. It's like looking at the heart of entropy itself. Parts of it exist in dimensions we can't even perceive, but we've been studying it for 2 years now, learning its patterns." "Learning what exactly?" Saul demanded. "How to kill it," Ho replied simply. "The machine has a core, a central processing unit that manages all the dimensional harvesting. If we can overload it with enough energy, the feedback should destroy the entire network. No more crystalline entities, no more harvesting." Dr. Yoon Hai-rin's crystalline form pulsed with rapid calculations. "The energy requirements would be enormous. How do you plan to generate that much power?" "We're going to use the machine's own hunger against it," came the voice of Lieutenant Kim Na-ri, one of the fleet's top engineers. "We've been converting our ship's reactors into dimensional batteries, storing energy from this twisted space. When we release it all at once, directly into the machine's core, the explosion will be visible from several galaxies away," Ho finished. "But there's a problem. The overload will tear a massive rift between our dimensions. If we're going to get home, we need your fleet's position to contain the breach on your side." Sul felt her heart racing. "What do you need us to do?" "Form a containment grid at the coordinates we're sending you. Every ship with dimensional shielding needs to be there. When the rift opens, you'll have maybe 10 minutes to stabilize it before it either seals permanently or expands to consume your entire solar system. The tactical implications were staggering. They were asking the entire galactic fleet to risk everything on a single desperate gambit. If the humans failed, the explosion might make things worse. If the containment grid failed, the dimensional rift could tear reality apart. "How many of you are left?" Sewell asked quietly. 37 ships. About 15,000 people. We lost 10 ships to the machine's defenses when we first arrived, but the rest of us have learned to stay hidden in the dimensional shadows. "When?" Sewell asked, and everyone in the chamber knew she wasn't questioning if they would attempt this. "Impossible plan. Give us 2 days to position our ships. So, if this doesn't work, tell them we tried. Tell them humans don't give up. Even trapped in another dimension, facing an ancient evil beyond comprehension, they were still planning to come home. Because that's what humans did. They found a way 2 days. That's all the time they had to position the largest fleet in galactic history. Admiral Yu Na stood in the relay station's command center, watching as ships from every corner of the galaxy converged on the coordinates Ho-Min had transmitted. The sight was breathtaking and terrifying. Over 3,000 vessels forming a perfect sphere around empty space, waiting for a dimensional rift that might tear them all apart. "Etherian bioships in position," reported Captain Zalketh, his tentacles dancing across organic control surfaces that pulsed with nervous energy. "Neural networks are synchronized and ready for dimensional containment." "Nexari crystal fleets reporting ready," chimed Dr. Yoon Heirin from her command vessel. "Quantum processors are calculating rift dynamics in real time. The massive Goliath dreadnoughts, each one the size of a small asteroid, positioned themselves at key gravitational points. Their rocky hulls had been modified with human-designed dimensional anchors, technology that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did, because humans had imagined it into existence. Sol Chang floated in the command center's zero-gravity observation deck, her eyes fixed on the empty space where her people would either return home or die trying. Around her, holographic displays showed energy readings that made no sense according to conventional physics. The void sector was becoming active, responding to whatever the humans were doing on the other side. "Sewell," Yuna's voice came through. "The communication system. We're getting preliminary readings. Something big is happening in there." The first sign was a pulse of light that existed in colors that had no names. It flashed across the void like a heartbeat, visible to every species, in their own unique way. The Etherians saw it as pure thought given form. The Nexari perceived it as mathematical perfection. The Goliaths felt it as the rhythm of planets being born. "Energy spike detected," announced the sensor operator, Lieutenant Park Soo-jin. "It's building exponentially. Whatever they're doing, it's working." In the parallel dimension, Commander Ho-Min stood on the bridge of the UES Determination, watching as his fleet of 37 ships arranged themselves around the ancient machine's core. The construct was even more terrifying up close, a writhing mass of metal and flesh that stretched beyond the horizon, its surface covered with wounds that bled starlight. "All ships report ready," announced Commander Park Jin-woo from the engineering. "Vessel Defiance. Dimensional batteries are charged to maximum. We get one shot at this. Remember," Ho spoke to his fleet, "we ride the shockwave out. Don't try to control your ships. Let the explosion carry you home. The universe wants us back in our own dimension. We just need to give it a push." "Sir," Lieutenant Kim Na-ree's voice crackled with static from her position near the machine's core. "The entity is responding to our presence. I think it knows what we're planning." The ancient machine began to move, its impossible geometry shifting as weapons that defied description emerged from its surface. Beams of crystallized entropy lanced out at the human ships, but the vessels had been changed by 2 years in the twisted dimension. Their hulls rippled like living tissue, absorbing energies that should have vaporized them instantly. "Now," Ho shouted, "all ships, release everything." 37 human vessels opened their dimensional batteries simultaneously, pouring the collected energy of an entire parallel universe directly into the machine's core. The ancient construct's death scream was heard across dimensions, a sound like reality itself tearing apart. Back in normal space, the explosion announced itself as a point of light that grew brighter than the nearest star. Then space itself began to crack. Dimensional rift opening. Yuna barked into her communicator. All ships activate containment fields. Don't let it expand beyond the grid. The rift split space like broken glass, revealing glimpses of the twisted dimension beyond. Through the cracks came the human fleet. Their ships tumbling through the breach like bullets fired from the heart of chaos. Many were damaged, their hulls scarred and twisted, but they were intact. They were alive. The first ship through was the Determination, Ho's command vessel spinning wildly as it burst into normal space. Behind it came the others, engineering ships, fighters, colony vessels, all of them changed by their journey, but unmistakably human in their stubborn refusal to give up. "Containment holding," reported the Nexari fleet commander. "Rift is stabilizing." The ancient machine's destruction sent shockwaves across multiple dimensions. Throughout the galaxy, every crystalline entity simply stopped moving. They hung in space like dead jewels, their hunger finally silenced. The harvest was over. As the dimensional rifts sealed themselves with help from the containment fleet, Sol Chang rushed to the relay station's docking bay. She was older now, grey streaking her hair, but her smile was brighter than it had been in years. The airlock cycled open, and Commander Ho Min stepped through. His uniform was torn, his face marked by exhaustion and experiences that would take years to explain, but he was unmistakably human, stubbornly, impossibly human. "Welcome home," Sol said, her voice thick with emotion. Ho looked past her through the station's viewports at the stars beyond. In the distance, he could see human ships already taking up patrol positions around the sealed dimensional boundaries. Children were playing in the observation decks of rebuilt colonies, while their parents planned new defense grids. "Home," he repeated, then grinned that particular human grin that had always driven other species slightly crazy. "Yeah, but you know we can't rest, right? Those dimensional barriers need constant monitoring, and Sul—" He paused, looking serious. "We found evidence that there might be other machines out there, other dimensions with their own hungry gods." Sul nodded, understanding perfectly. "Because that's what humans did. They came home from impossible journeys, hugged their families, and then immediately started planning how to protect everyone else from the next impossible threat. The galaxy was safe again, and humanity was back to work." The end.